Hello and welcome. I'm joined by Marten Pieters, CEO of Vodafone India, and we're sitting at the headquarters in Mumbai. Mr. Pieters, thank you very much for speaking with us. So, first question, I'm going to come to the Indo-UK corridor part in a bit, but how has things been for the telecom world in the context of what's happening all around us in the last year or so?
Yeah, I think we had quite a bit of a rough ride coming into India as Vodafone, but I think not only us, the whole industry. What happened, of course, was that in 2008, on top of the 6 mobile operators that were already in the market, 6 new ones came in. Now, I think that's pretty unheard of in the world. Most countries don't have more than 3 or 4 operators, and actually there's no economic feasibility for so many operators. So that's what we had to fight out in the years after. Now you see some more consolidation. So if you say the last year, let's more say the last 6 months, the industry is doing better again because the competition is a bit less and the number of operators has gone down. So I think we are more optimistic about the future.
And are you affected at all by the slowdown in economic growth, in economic activity and so on, as a telecom company in general and specific?
We see some effect, but not so much. And actually, for us, the monsoon is probably more important than the rate of the rupee against the dollar. And we have had a very good monsoon so far. So we expect that spending, and especially the rural areas, will actually be very good this year. What we see is that there is a bit of a relationship to the economy, but not that much. We are a pretty basic service. And many of our customers, of course, will only indirectly be impacted by the forex effect. So maybe longer term you might see that because it has an impact on their spending power. Short term we have not really seen it.
Right. And how would you say your consumption or consumer behavior has changed, if at all, in the last couple of years? I mean, are you seeing a shift? And I mean,
yeah, we see clear shifts happening. First of all, when we started, we were very urban. Actually, we started out in the cities. And of course that's where the high usage customers are, people who are typically even maybe willing to take a postpaid connection. Of course, very soon we saw that this prepaid market was developing very quickly, which has a very different behavior because you see that prepaid customers typically are willing to swap SIMs very easily or even using more than one SIM, which we had to address in several ways. What we've now seen the last 2 years when we came in, especially after we got 3G spectrum, the data services have taken off very well. It was in the beginning a bit slow, but now we see a tremendous growth in the use of data, and that's very encouraging because I think the potential in India for use of internet for all kind of, be it education, be it entertainment, all kind of applications, I think there's a huge untapped possibility there.
Right. So do you see prices, for instance, dipping further on the data side as there's more competition?
Well, the prices are actually very low already. Now you never know in India, prices don't easily go up in India, they tend to go more down. But I think overall the issue is not so much the price at this moment. The issue is far more that people are not comfortable using the services. Of course we have quite a big part of our user group who is not used to work with the internet or have access via more complicated terminals. Many people don't even use SMS. That's already a service that they find pretty sophisticated. So I think our challenge is not so much the pricing of the product. Our challenge is really to make people use the product and to educate them how to use it. And what we see is that once we have done that, and we have seen our customer base using data is now already over 41 million, and that's out of a total base of about 155. So you see it's a considerable part, but once they start using it, then the usage increases because once people get used to it, they like it. And especially if they then move to faster connections, so from what we call the 2G connection moving to a 3G connection, you see actually the usage is really increasing very fast.
Right. So if we were to look at the larger ecosystem of telecom infrastructure, towers and so on, there's obviously been a lot of investment going in there. There are also concerns about, various kinds of sort of environmental concerns. How do you see that panning out? I mean, do you see that investment still going on in the same sort of almost geometric proportion as before?
I think there's 2 answers because actually, indeed, there is a difference between what the operator does and what the outcome is in terms of number of towers. What we've seen in India is since we have so many operators, also the spectrum that was given to operators is very, very limited. Where in the rest of the world, for example, Vodafone's average spectrum holding in all the countries that it's in is far over 20 megahertz. Here in India, we have a lot more customers and we only have 8 megahertz. So what operators have to do is kind of squeeze in lots of customers in very little spectrum. That actually translates into many more towers, because you can have one big tower serving a lot of customers, but it's only possible if you have a lot of spectrum on that tower. If I only have limited spectrum, I will have to repeat that tower again and again and again. That's what's happened in India. So I assume that over time, when the number of operators is probably further going to consolidate, that actually you will see also consolidation of towers. It's already happening here.
Right. So that's one regulatory issue in some ways. I mean, let me ask you the other regulatory issue, partly as a company that's investing in India or has invested in India. So you're I guess looking at two issues. One is to do with telecom and telecom investment and how much investment is allowed, and the second is some of the tax issues that you've been facing, which of course is publicly known. So how are things there? I mean, are you seeing satisfactory resolution? Are you happy?
Well, I think the Vodafone tax case is all over the media regularly, so I'm not going to comment much there. It's actually something that's between the shareholder and the Indian government, and they are talking to each other to try to find a solution, which is in itself good news, I think. If you look at the company, then what we've seen, and I'm sure I'm not the only company because I speak to other people, of course, also, that we have seen quite a tough time if it comes to tax and penalties. What we see in, for example, the Ministry of Telecom, DOT, after the 2G scam happened, where people went to jail for misbehavior or whatever it was, we've seen that the bureaucracy has become extremely careful in taking calls, more or less. Decisions are not being made, and if you have to take a decision, then especially if it comes to penalties, where there is a rule in the telecom regulation saying you can fine up to 50 crores for an event. That is now being interpreted, it is 50 crores for each event, which means that we have gotten so many claims and penalties the last 2-3 years that it's a ridiculous number. It is actually, if you add up all the tax and penalties, the tax claims, and I'm excluding the claim on Vodafone PLC in London, it's over 24,000 crores of tax and penalty claims we got in the last few years. Now that number, I can never, no matter how well the business does, I can never earn that. So there is clearly an environmental issue that we need to clean up this situation, because it's a complete discouragement to make investments.
And everyone is facing the same problem.
That is not a Vodafone problem. It might be for us a bit more, I would say, because there might have been a bit more focus on us in general. But I think this is facing, you've seen cases in the news coming, the Shell case. I've talked to other companies who have the same issues. A very aggressive way of tax collection, which then typically ends up in court.
Right. And what's the sort of, if you were to give one illustration of an area of penalty that needs to be addressed because you feel it's either unfair or it's overbearing?
Let me stay in the same area as, for example, the DOT, where they can give this 50 crore penalty. Even submitting a report a day late translates then into a 50 crore penalty. Now, I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Any other instances of where the penalty originates?
Well, for example, we are talking about KYC. We of course, since it's a high churn industry, as we call it, many people swap their SIMs very regularly. We have to do an identification of the customer, and that's all based on more or less security reasons, anti-terrorism, which we of course fully understand and have full sympathy for and are willing to cooperate, of course, with the government. Now the issue is that if you have to do that a few 100 million times per year, because there's those kind of numbers we're talking about, with people who or don't have a good identity, or the identity is very difficult to actually establish, we run the complete risk of that. Every customer that comes in, for whatever reason, there's something wrong on his identification, and I'm not even talking about he's not who he says, but if the signature is on the wrong place, it translates automatically in a 5,000 rupees claim penalty. So if you see the enormous numbers, we're a scale industry, so everything in our industry is immediately 5 million, 10 million, 100 million. So even a small amount translates then very quickly in huge penalties, and that is, I think, an issue that we are facing. We've talked to the Minister of Telecom about it. He is sympathetic about it, but so far nobody has done anything.
So let me ask you a little bit on the British India corridor. As a PLC which is investing in India, any thoughts on what can be done to either encourage investment? Are there two-way investment opportunities? What you could take from here and from there to here?
I think in general there are a few issues, and I'm thinking not telling anything news. You can really see it in the media, and I see it in our industry. Regulation is very detailed. It's very complex. Where other countries have freed up a lot of stuff and means that business can move much faster. Let me give you one example again. Between the three biggest GSM operators, 5 years ago, we decided to merge our tower business into Indus, which is now the biggest tower company actually in the world, also in India, but also in the world. That took us 5.5 years to get that approved in court. Now, believe me, most countries in the world, you would get that done in 3 to 6 months. And it is so complicated, it is massively complicated, and every step you take, the taxman comes in and opposes it and drags the case in court for many, many months longer than is necessary. Now, that kind of, the ease of doing business in India is really bad compared to many other countries. And I think that has nothing to do with the crisis, that has nothing to do with the rupee. This is just something that needs to be cleaned up. And I think that's a lot of detailed work that needs to happen. Where does this really add value? Because it's going to happen anyhow, only it happens 5 years later. You know, it's not that it's really materially changing the world, it's just delaying stuff. So I think regulation, too much detailed regulation is making doing business difficult. Then, as I said before, the aggressive tax collection is something that the world has understood very well, because all the big names that are here have faced it. It's not only the Vodafone tax case, a lot of others have popped up. And of course this is talk in boardrooms all over the world. If you go to India to invest in India, there's a huge risk because, you know, taxman might come and claim anything from you for any moment. So I think those things need to be far more rational and far more rule-based instead of need-based.
Right. Are you seeing, or have you seen in your tenure opportunities in the other way? I mean, you know, what you could take in terms of work done in India to the UK or Europe? Or resources that you could use here, or research and development?
Vodafone has actually invested not only in operations in mobile here in telecoms, but we have brought thousands of people or recruited thousands of people in India, bringing work from European countries here for back office work. So yes, we are seeing a very good opportunity there. It's cheaper, but I think even more important, and that was quite a surprise for some of my European colleagues, the quality of the work is actually very, very good, typically better than what they experience in Europe. So India still has that potential. India is I think, a fantastic country in terms of potential, very smart people, lots of people. I think it is really the surrounding effects that determine the success. The basics are fantastic. There's a fantastic smart population, big population. It is still relatively early in its development stage. So I always compare it with the US in the 20s or so, in the 1920s. Everyone is now aiming for its next, be it his motorcycle or his car, be it his first house or whatever. There's a huge ambition in the population to kind of work your way up in society. Which will drive the economy, just the internal economy, I think, for many, many decades to come. And that's a fantastic opportunity. Education is if you're able to enter it, is typically very good. So I think it has a fantastic potential, and we see it like that. That's why Vodafone is very upbeat about India in general. Of course, there's a lot of negative talk about all the setbacks and tax cases, but the basic thing is we believe in the country, and that's why we came here. And we believe in the potential it has, and that's why we keep investing in it. You started saying, indeed, telecoms is a capital-intensive industry. I don't think people realize that, but a company like us in India invests every year about between anything. In the first years, we invested 8,000, 9,000 crores per year. We've now gone back a bit because this big rollout is over. But it's still anything between 4,000 to 5,000 crores, and it actually might go up again if we would get more 3G spectrum.
Right. So, last question, which in a way I would ask you to sort of synopsize what a few things that you said earlier. How's the year ahead looking to you, and what's the note that you'd like to end on?
We are, it's first business as usual, and it's actually, as I said, a bit better, because what we've seen, the competition is less than it used to be. We've seen some form of soft consolidation happening, meaning we didn't really see mergers of companies, but companies have decided to stop doing business in certain parts of the country, concentrate more on areas where they are stronger. So you can say that the competitive intensity has really reduced. We've also seen for the first time in our industry that we were able to put the prices up a bit, which is actually not done by really increasing prices, but by reducing the discounts a bit. So for us it's looking really good, and I think for the first time in the whole industry we are a bit more optimistic. Yes.
And there's sanity in the industry.
We are a bit more optimistic.
Right. So last question. So one anecdote that you've sort of seen or noticed in the way people use phones or telecom, and something that's sort of gives you a sense of what India is about or the uniqueness of India.
Yeah, I spoke to someone who does surveys under the Indian population, and they ask people to go out and they ask people what has been the biggest change in your life the last 10 years, and the standard answer is the access to a mobile phone. So I think that is fantastic, because I'm actually very proud to work in the mobile industry, because I think the last 10 years in the whole world, introduction of mobile communication into most emerging markets has been the biggest game changer in the world. It is contributing a lot to development. It gives people opportunity to talk to their family members. So it's not only economical, it's also social. It makes their life better. And I think this is such an important basic infrastructure that we now need to drive it further, and that's the discussions we have with the Indian government. India is far behind if it comes to broadband. In the Asia it's by far the worst country if you look at the bigger countries. So I think we need, as an industry, far more trust from the government. We need more spectrum at really affordable prices, so that we can drive that broadband market much faster, because it needs to come from mobile. I'm not saying it will only come from mobile, but if you see the limited rollout in this country of fixed line connections, even cable, it is all very limited compared to the 900 million people that have a mobile connection. So this fantastic opportunity, especially in the rural areas where people don't have much alternative, to use the mobile combined with the internet for education, for healthcare, for agriculture kind of business tips, and all the things that are there but really need to be now implemented amongst the population. And I think if you do that right, and there's also statistical proof of that, you can drive your economy by 1 to 1.5% per year faster by getting that right.
Right, Mr. Marten Pieters, thank you so much for speaking with us.